Good morning. Welcome to the Point. Our show, like everybody's lives, have changed over the past several days, and starting this week, the program will look a little different. You've already noticed this morning our news update that happens just before this segment. We'll continue doing that over the next several weeks. Then we'll talk with someone who can give us more insight on how the state or federal government is reacting to this health crisis. This morning, we talk with State Senator Peter Macgregor. Senator, let's start with how life has changed in Lansing, because it started out with we knew this virus was coming, and then all of a sudden, in lightning speed, it was here. The state has been quick to act, but the legislature has gone a little further and approved some pretty big line items to start dealing with this right now. So tell me what you in the Senate and your colleagues in the House have done from a monetary standpoint, and then we'll talk a little bit about what Lansing looks like.
Well, if you recall, maybe about 10 days ago, this all started with the Big Ten Conference being canceled, the basketball, and so everybody was depressed. Fast forward a couple days, and it really puts things in perspective, how upside down this coronavirus has put our state in. Just recently, we passed a $150 million appropriation to help out wherever we can within our state. There's a lot of federal dollars that are coming down the pipeline that we can also discuss, but what we did is we kind of laid out that $150 million into three buckets. One bucket to make sure that the critical infrastructure of state government and the monitoring equipment that is needed, the testing equipment, the labs, have the resources that they need to function. Most of the tests that are happening in the state of Michigan are happening by the Department of Health and Human Services right here in our state, so the turnaround time is much quicker. I think over 65% of those are being done right here in the state of Michigan. The second bucket is more to help out our hospitals, the critical infrastructure to the hospitals, the doctors, the nurses, making sure they have their supplies, making sure that they can continue to do what they need to do and expand their capacity, which is a huge issue. That's the flattening of the curve. If we can get some more capacity to them, then that relieves the stress to our healthcare providers. The third bucket is more of a reserve fund if things happen to get, will go a little bit more south and happen to get worse than what we anticipated. So there is some more money that it'll take 10 of us in the Senate to show up there, make a motion, and move that money to wherever it needs to go. So it's something that there are some dollars, because we knew we wouldn't be meeting as often as we normally do in the legislature. So it's something that can happen quickly. May even happen this next Wednesday coming up if we feel that those dollars are needed in other areas.
When you talk about having that money ready, there is a bit of an advantage because the state financially does have some reserve and has some ability to do that. So better than if this would have happened, in 2008 or 2007 when things were struggling. So there is that advantage. What else does the state have as an advantage in being able to quickly adapt? Because we've seen the governor regularly issue executive orders that deal with any number of things. The legislature acted quickly. Do we have the appropriate folks at DHHS in place? Are we fully staffed and as ready as we can be to handle this?
Yeah, there's so many smart people in Lansing right now. I have a lot of confidence. We have a lot of response teams. The governor developed a response team for our healthcare system, our education system, our economic recovery, and on the virus itself. So she has a lot of good people that are working with the legislature to keep us, communicate with us, let us know what's needed, and we're responding as quick as we can. And that's having this extra bucket of funds, the $50 million, is there so we can react very quickly to the needs of any department in the state.
What do you and your colleagues see as a long term? Just before we started, you said there are so many things we don't know, and that's exactly true. We don't know what the duration is. We don't know when you and I will once again meet in the studio rather than a larger area so we can stay better separated.
Social distance.
That's
here.
right. So there are a lot of things that we don't know, but as a planning mechanism, I know the legislature has truncated its schedule. You have meetings on Wednesday, but not necessarily everybody's going to meet, not necessarily going to have votes every Wednesday. So what kind of duration are you planning for?
So my hopes are that this is 3 to 6 weeks, but I'm going to prepare for the worst. That's why our recovery for our employers and our employees and that segment of how this affects those areas is so critical, and we have the legislature is working on how can we help out those people, because this is critical. Our education system is critical. We don't know how long these kids are going to be out of school, how long the schools are going to be out. It's very unclear, like you said. It's tough to make a decision not having clarity in these areas. I think one of the best things that we've done over the past decade since I've been in office is have that rainy day fund, that budget stabilization fund. This is why you create those funds when you have an emergency. I feel sorry for states that don't have that rainy day fund. We have over $1.2 billion, I think it's $1.2 billion in that rainy day fund for this type of an emergency. Just like at home, you know, you have savings if your car breaks down. You have savings if your heating and cooling goes out. So it is so key that people understand this is why we save, this is why the state saves, this is why being in debt is not the best thing, whether you're state legislature or mom and dad at home.
When we come back, more of what the state response looks like now and what it could look like further down the road. That's next. To the Point. Welcome back to the Point. This morning we're talking about how the state is responding to the coronavirus outbreak. We know that the governor's put out any number of executive orders, and the state legislature too has been working to make sure the state can do everything it can to protect the people of Michigan. When you talk about the long-term impact, and you talked about employees and employers, there is a kind of a third component to that. As businesses close, tax revenues dwindle, and as you are not in session as often, the appropriators particularly are still meeting, trying to put together budgets. Right. But the longer this goes on, it seems to me, the more impact it could have on what your budget looks like, because state revenues will be impacted.
Yeah, sales tax is going to be down, obviously. It's look at the gas. A lot of sales tax comes off of the fuel that we purchase, and fuel is at the lowest point it's been since 2006.
And we can assume that it's being consumed less because fewer people are moving around.
Exactly. So you're correct. This is going to be, I thought last year's budget cycle was a little difficult with trying to negotiate with the governor. We're not going to have any problem negotiating with the executive branch or the governor at all, or any of the directors of these budgets. That's going to be the easy part. The hard part is how are we going to use those dollars that we do bring in, because it's going to be a lot smaller than what we anticipated in January.
When you and your colleagues talk about this in terms, you said you hope 3 to 6 weeks, but 6 weeks is a long time if you're a service worker who is not getting a paycheck because the restaurants have been ordered to do carry out only, and bars have been told to close, and many other areas, casinos, etc. If you and your colleagues look at that, as you prepare, as you pointed out, that $50 million to help them, unemployment insurance goes so far, but there are going to be problems with everything from rents to mortgages to other things that are going to, particularly if you go out 6 weeks. I mean, is there a contingency plan, or are you trying to create a contingency plan to go further?
We're meeting daily, whether by teleconference calls or just texting emails on how can we help out with the recovery. It's the stabilization, economic stabilization is what we're concerned about. Certain industries can have hiccups, others can't. There's a lot of resources out there that are stepping up. The Small Business Association of Michigan, SBAM, they have a website, great website for, I hope every employer goes to that website because it's free to anybody. The Small Business Administration has a lot of resources. The feds just came out with a lot of resources that will be coming to the state to help out with unemployment insurance and sick leave. These are things that are still unclear because we don't know if it's going to go beyond 3 or 6 weeks. I just yesterday afternoon, I was out visiting a lot of my favorite restaurants and eateries and coffee shops just to check in to make sure that they're doing okay. Well, I ended up buying probably a couple $100 worth of gift cards because I felt like this is how I can help. And I hope every one of your viewers goes out there and buys, a $25 gift card or a $50 gift card from their favorite eatery, because that cash flow helps out, and every little bit is going to help out all these employees and employers at in all these industries.
Federal government has a big role in this, as you pointed out. How concerned are you right now? And we should stipulate that as we do this, the bulk of this interview won't air for a couple of days, so it could change. How convinced are you or concerned about getting the right kind of supplies initially from the federal government, mass tests, et cetera?
I'm convinced that they're going to be there. When they're going to get there, that is the still unclear. I know everybody is working around the clock, so getting that supply chain moving, that's why I think the governor implemented the Michigan Army National Guard, not to patrol. We're not in a martial state quite yet, and hopefully we never will be, but they're there to help out with that supply chain. Getting those supplies from A to B, getting those supplies from where they are to our local health communities, local health hospitals and agencies, and anybody who needs that. We need as much help as we possibly can in moving those products. So I think the products are there. We just have to get them from A to B, and timing is critical.
And quickly, and I appreciate the point you make about the National Guard, because this is precisely what the National Guard is used for logistics and other things. And oh, by the way, U.S. military has a sizable medical contingent, and they know about some of these things. They're dispatched around the world. But quickly, if you can, try to give me your sense of what the response has been here in the state of Michigan up to now. Are we doing everything we could and should, and are you comfortable that the government has acted swiftly enough?
Yes, I have a lot of confidence in what we've done in Lansing for the state of Michigan. I know there's a lot of executive orders that have gone out that are going to cause some problems within our state, but I want your viewers to have confidence in the people that that represent them in Lansing, that we are confident that our state is going to be one of the better states prepared for this crisis. You see what's happening in other states, not quite at the level as we are here in the state of Michigan, and hopefully we don't go through what some of our friends in other countries have gone through, at least in our state of Michigan. I have a lot of confidence. I think we have very smart people, very, very dedicated people who want to make sure, as you know, we want to keep that curve low and not have that spike like some of these other countries have had.
So even as all of our lives have changed over the past 2 weeks or so, and are likely to over the next 2 weeks, we will continue to adapt, just like we have here with the show, where each Sunday from now on, or at least in the foreseeable future, we'll start out with a news update and then talk to some of our government officials about how they're handling the coronavirus. Hope you'll join us next week. To the Point.